and colleagues, commissioners, and officers from Swakam. They came here to give full support, and also participants. I must say that I'm very honored and privileged to be invited in this program. And in fact, we had the first conversation with Prof. Kamal and the team a few months ago. I thought there must be some form of discourse with Swakam. And the reason being that many are not aware of the fact that Swakam is a commission. You know, there's still this perception that Swakam is an NGO rather than a commission. I think the large population of Malaysia is Malaysian not, perhaps understand the nature of the work of Swakam. And especially, we know that RSOG train future leaders. And I think it is important that leadership that have been nurtured, trained by institutions like RSOG appreciates human rights as an important aspect of our life in this country. So today, I thought I would give a rather our view. What is human right all about? What are the issues and challenges that face not only by our commission, but also the so-called human rights defenders? I must say that human right is real. It's not something that we talk about among intellectuals in this country. What sort of human right do we aim to achieve, for example? Is it universal? Is it, based on local condition? So these are issues that I suppose have great impact on how human right in Malaysia finally would achieve its goal. Yeah, because as you see, that the world face so much of human right in infringement, even to the extent of having this divide or discriminatory. I always discuss this with my European friend, what sort of standard that they really applies in terms of human rights. When at the moment we know that there is this war between Russia and Ukraine, and there are a lot of Ukrainian left the country, become refugees. How is it that they are taken easily by the European countries? How is it that it's so difficult for African refugees, Asian refugees, not be taken care of by European countries when they are in their shores? So is there a double standard of human rights that we practice in this world? Is there such thing as universal human right? When you see this divisive, this discriminatory practice among states, when you see African refugee coming in, you will try to stop them, even to the extent of sending them back to Africa. The British government, for example, signed an agreement with Rwandan government to place all the African refugees there in Rwanda, when they do not want to come back to Africa because they know that their life is being threatened. So what sort of human right practice is that? So sometimes human right can be elusive, but we have our own standard of human right, and we believe that Malaysia must put right as to how we want to ensure that human right is achieved at the end of the day. So those are issues that I thought we have to discuss. And leadership is so important that those who holds position, especially in the government sector, understand the real need of, for example, not just to understand or be aware of some of the human rights issues, but also to practice what is been provided under the law, especially our federal constitution. Yeah, I will go through some of these points in my slides.
Sorry,
Right.
Prof. Dato, before we
want
go
to-
on,
oh,
yeah, no worries. Just like a layman like me,
Yeah.
like how do we actually create awareness on human rights? Like, because for me, if I think human rights, oh, I have freedom, I can move here, I can go here, I can go there. So I consider that, okay, some rights. But what else we can actually do to create awareness and gain more understanding of this aspect of human rights?
Now, in as far as Malaysia is concerned, human rights aspect, you can look at the federal constitution first, and let's look at where do we? Is it there? Okay. So I'll just press the. This.
So the below one. This one.
Or before that, I'll just come to the main function of our commission. Yeah, there are basically four. I mentioned about awareness and to provide education relating to human rights. That is our first role. Then to advise and assist government in formulating legislation and procedures and recommend the necessary measures to be taken. And third role is recommend to the government with regard to subscription or accession of treaties and other international instruments in the field of human rights. You have, for example, we have already ratified 3 very important international treaties, CEDAW and CRC, yeah, and one more. We have ratified that. And finally, inquiry. We have the right to make inquiries into complaints regarding influence. So these are we will come back to that later if you have any issues. Now, I just want to tell you about, where is it? Oh, sorry. This one is it. So pakai ni. This one. Yes, freedom, which relate to human right. Now, this is very important provisions under the federal constitution, because the basic human right in Malaysia guarantees the basic human right is guaranteed under federal constitution, and it is in the federal constitution. For example, Article 5, liberty of the person. You have the liberty, you have the right to live, for example. Yeah? Right to liberty. Article 6, slavery and forced labor is prohibited. Article 7, protection against retrospective criminal law and repeated trials. Article 8, equality before the law. Article 9, provision of banishment and freedom of movement. You talk about freedom of movement. This is the right that is given and signed in the federal constitution, and it is also in line with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Freedom of speech, assembly and association. Freedom of religion, right in respect of education, and finally right to property. These are what we call the fundamental liberties, guaranteed under the federal constitution. And that actually echo the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Yeah. It is important that under our Suhakam Act, that while we embrace Universal Declaration of Human Rights, UDHR, but we also have to take note that so long as it is not inconsistent with the Federal Constitution. So our job in Suhakam is to ensure that these rights, as enshrined in the Federal Constitution, is guaranteed and protected in this country. Yeah. So this is very important. Freedom of movement. You should not be hindered. You should not be impeded as to your movement. Freedom of speech. But as you know, that the rights given under the Federal Constitution is subject to other laws. Yeah? It is not an absolute right under our Federal Constitution. Hence you have, for example, Article 149, Article 150, as regard to emergency, as regard to when government can suspend your right under the Constitution or the fundamental liberties. So you must remember that. But we also believe that even if in a situation where your right is suspended, but there must be respect to ensure that human right is guaranteed. Yeah? Yeah, for example, we used to have Internal Security Act. Now we have SOSMA. SOSMA is a preventive law, actually, to combat terrorism, to ensure safety of our citizen in this country. So therefore you have SOSMA. So some of this right may be suspended if one is being taken as a detainee. However, one have to take note that SOSMA also guarantee your human rights. For example, right to be represented, right to be, this right that cannot be abridged or abrogated. So it is important that there is this balance. Yeah? While we know that SOSMA is, as far as the country is concerned, to ensure safety and security for the people, but at the same time we have to ensure that this human right is being guaranteed. So it is also our job in Suhakam to ensure that this right will not be infringed, yeah, by any enforcement agencies. Yeah. So this right, as I said, they are there, but it is not an absolute right. Yeah. But we in the Commission have to make sure that if there is any complaint on this, that the rights have not been given, then we will be at the forefront to provide that guarantees or to ensure that it is protected, because we are a watchdog, yeah, to ensure that the government follows what is provided under the Act. Yeah.
So just curious to know, so how do you ensure that the government agencies or the government or any other agencies, they actually follow these human rights? Do you have like regular touch base with this agency, or based on complaints from the people?
One is complaint. Any citizen can come to Suhakam and complain and tell us complain to us and report that their families have been detained and not been given the right to be represented by lawyers, so on and so forth. So we will take up the complaint and we will go and meet the enforcement agencies, especially the police, as to what happened to the detainees, and that certain act need to be done, and we will do the necessary follow-up. The other thing is that there will be a regular session where the United Nations agencies will come, and I don't want to say that they do their audits. They will come and ask whether these rights given to the detainees are being seen to be enforced or not. And we will be there to inform or to report to the government agencies. There are, for example, since 2015, after the passing of SOSMA, 47 complaints by the detainees' families that they are not getting these rights, for example, right to representation, and so on and so forth. So that has been done, and that is our job, to do that, actually.
So it's quite a huge. Yeah, okay.
Thank you. My name is Tengku Fauzi. I'm from Sohakam as well. We are in this together, I suppose, all of us, in terms of human rights. So from the picture painted by Prof. Rahmat, our chairman, I think here, in relation to SOSMA, preventive laws, for example, and also in relation to the guaranteed a right under Part 2 of the Federal Constitution, which is not absolute, as our professor has said. And how are we going to, for example, as you question, how are we going to, what SOACAM is supposed to do in this case, in terms of facing the relevant government agencies and so on. So I think there is this need, in my personal opinion, this need of multi-layered or collective engagements, I mean, by all parties involved, by all stakeholders. I think that is very important. I think that's about it. I don't want to elaborate too long. Thank you.
Please raise any issues you like to raise
much.
while I thought this is going to be more of an informal session.
Yeah, please feel free to raise your hand and ask question or feedback regarding this, our human rights topic and issue. Anyone else has any questions or queries at the moment?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Dato. I've got a very basic question, actually, from a very layman perspective. We have seen on many occasions where people express their feelings under the pretext of my right, and it was found that sometimes that right basically contradicts, or rather, in the community's perspective of the community's right. So, being a layman, I've yet to trying to understand what right have a person got in expressing his right when that expression actually cause some emotions, anger within a community, for example. I mean, we have seen cases like people burning the Quran in Sweden and claiming that this is my right of expression. And where do we stand in this context? Sorry for being a very layman.
Thank you. Thank you, Prof. Kamal. Actually, we have also to see that for every right, there is also responsibility. You have your right. That is why the law is seen to be fair. Because if, for example, you have the right to express your view which tainted or defame somebody, then there is this defamatory law that you can sue the person, or you can be liable under criminal defamation law. There is such thing as that. So you must not exceed that right that is given to you. Yes, you can have your right to express your view or your opinion, but it must not touch on certain personal view of somebody else or personal right of someone. Because, there is also such thing as seditious. That's why we cannot, for example, ban or abolish the Sedition Act, because Malaysia, being a multinational, multiracial country, multi-religious, there are things that you cannot say out out loud. You know, if, for example, the incident in Sweden happened in Malaysia, someone definitely will have to be prosecuted for doing that, because there is much disrespectful of religion, for example. You know, so that is why, you know, there is a limit to one's freedom. You know, that's why I said it cannot be absolute freedom, because absolute freedom, then you are not respecting others. You are not going to respect the religion of others, the feeling, the culture of others. So there's always this balance, and that's why I said that universality sometimes can cause problem to a country like Malaysia. That is why the balance has always been our federal constitution. You know, that we have to revert to the federal constitution. We have, you know, for example, you have Article 5 to Article 13, that is your right. That is your basic right as human being, even to the extent of, you know, owning a property. But that right must not be taken in a manner that you can cause problems to others. Yeah. So, you know, when it comes to, for example, I know that we have to recommend to the government as regard to ratifying international treaties on human rights, for example, ICERT and others, you know. When you have a situation where it touches upon some of these fundamental rights and important provisions relating to the king, for example, relating to religion, relating to Article 153, which is again is a very sensitive issue on the right and special privileges of Bumiputra. That is very sensitive. So you cannot simply just ratify and announce that we are ratifying this act, for example. But that does not mean that we are not doing anything. You know, that does not mean that Malaysia is not doing anything. Not doing anything is also bad, to show that we are not supporting the universal application of the treaties. But at our end, what we can do is, for example, to echo the spirit of that international treaties and form our own, for example, legislation. Now, I have mentioned this, for example, and under the Rome Statute, where the government have withdrawn the Rome Statute. But that does not mean that we are not supporting the fact that, you know, we don't support the idea of the perpetrator of crime being, there is no impunity for perpetrator of crime, crime against humanity, crime, genocide, war crime, and so on and so forth under the Rome Statute. But what we can have is local legislation that support the spirit of the law that goes against crimes against humanity, genocide, and war crime. Because if you ask anyone, they will not agree to that kind of, you know, crime, you know. So there are so many creative or innovative way we can do. And I think that sometimes we have to think about whether Malaysia is ready or not, you know, to embrace those international treaties. You know that there are a lot of oppositions, there are a lot of objections. But that does not mean that the government cannot do anything. I've mentioned this also, that the fact that we are not ratifying the Convention on Refugees, but that does not mean that we are not supporting the idea of helping, assisting, or give humanitarian assistance to those who come to Malaysia. They know that their life are threatened in their country, that's why they come to this country. So what we can have is, for example, have a legal framework as to categorize who are actually these people, because at the moment the government only have undocumented, people, illegal, or party, you know. So how do we help them? So this is something that Suhakam has been, we try to initiate this idea of coming up with legal framework. At least we have the various categorization, because under the Convention of Refugees, there are asylum, there are seekers. Asylum seekers can be economic, asylum seekers, it can be political. So there are so many categories. But because we are not ratifying, or we are not a party to that convention, it gives, it's quite challenging for the government to provide those assistance, despite the fact that they are already here. So I think that is something that we should not be in denial, because these refugees, they are here for perhaps generation. Because so long as their country is in trouble, so long as they are not being accepted by their country, Rohingya, for example, is not accepted in Myanmar, then where are they going to go? So they are in Malaysia. There are a few hundreds of them. And they are not going to live in 1 or 2 years' time. So what do? We cannot be in denial and say that, oh, they will leave the country. No. So what we have proposed in Suhakam is at least to give the right to work to these people. Of course, there is this xenophobia among Malaysians, that if we give work to them, then there is no work for us. But then, you must remember that we still take these people to work as our gardeners. We pay them. Illegally, because they are illegal, but we pay them. But why not we legitimize them? And at least the government know where they are. Because you have, for example, give them a pass, for example. And also create that economy among them. Because these people are also creative. If you go to their areas, they have their own shops. They have so many things that they are quite creative, So why do we have to stop them? So of course, it requires education, it requires awareness among Malaysians. And it's not easy to accept the fact that these people come and they want to take our jobs, so on and so forth. For example, there are dearth of workers in the plantation sector. Can we use them? Because Malaysians do not want to be plantation workers. Malaysians do not want to be cleaners or gardeners, So why are we, in a way, we are denying ourselves, There is a denial on our part. They're saying that we are, they are taking our job. Not necessarily, The right to education, I think it is a very important right, especially to children. They need to be educated. They have to be given education. At least they become better citizens. They don't become, robbers, or they go into others, being influenced to do other, evils. So at least, even in Islam, those who have been migrating to one country to another, Rasulullah, for example, is also migrating from Makkah to Medina because of the trouble, So I think we have to be benevolent in that sense. But of course, I'm saying this, because we have seen this in Suhakam, and we have been working with the NGOs. So, it's not easy for the government to start, But I think they are working on that to come up with a solution. How do we solve this problem? If they are given a job and if they work, the third countries probably will be. It's easier for them to be taken by the third countries. But I must tell you about these third countries taking refugees out of Malaysia. How many percent? How many percent? 10%? No. 20%? No. It is less than that. So who they take? Only those qualified. Those who do not have qualification and education, they will not take them. So where are they going to go? They are going to be here in Malaysia. They will not go back to their country until the war is over in the country. So we have to think hard on this. So this is something that we are doing, and of course we get the hit from the public, because why is it that Suhakam is supporting the idea that the children of this refugee must be given education, they have to be given work, so on and so forth. But we have to be practical to what sort of work we want to give them. I think the government is now working on some, perhaps of making, things easier for. We'll see how it goes. So the job of SUHAKAM is giving this proposal and to see that some of this proposal be taken up and do some of the follow-up. So these are some of the immediate issues. Now there is another issue that is very important for SUHAKAM. You know that Malaysia has embraced the Sustainable Development Goal, the SDG. By 2030, Malaysia is, we fully embrace SDG. Under the SDG, there are 17 initiatives. And some of these initiatives are actually human rights. The first initiative, for example, is poverty. Poverty is actually, right to live and right to ensure that they have food on the table every day, sustainable, to be able to sustain their life economically, is human right. This fall under the second limb of very important aspect of human right. The first is political and civil right. The one that I have mentioned to you is the political and civil right. The second one is the economic, social, and cultural right. This is also human right. The right to clean air, for example, is also human right. It's also under SDG. Yeah. Can you just quickly flash the? Sorry, I need on the SDG.
So that when you talk about all this, the right to air and right to education, I think we can relate it back to the Maslow hierarchy of needs.
Yeah.
So this human rights has a lot to do with the basic needs of people, even refugees as well. They have the right for a better living, for the kids, for education. Yeah. So I think that is something that, thank you, because that's also create awareness and how we can actually relate to human rights and also the Maslow hierarchy of needs.
Yeah, I mean, it all boils down to, is, can you, human rights SDG. Yes. See, these are all the SDG. SDG 1, for example, no poverty. Then you have gender equality. Gender equality. 6, clean water and sanitation. And 16, peace, justice, and strong institution. They are all about human right. So, human right is very much, they are related, not just about the political and civil right, but also economic rights. So it is important that I do not know how we are going to ensure that there is such thing as no poverty under the SDG. And this is 2030 is not far from today, because how many years more? Where is the roadmap? Now, there is another thing about this SDG. The sustainability, we talk about sustainability and just transition. Just transition is another very important aspect of SDG, part of SDG, is to see that when there is a transformation of fuel economy to full green economy, that no one is to be left behind. Meaning to say, when you close an industry which focus on fossil fuel, and you want to move into transform into a green economy industry, what happened to the workers? What happened to these people? Are they going to be left? What sort of job they're getting? So this is something that I don't know whether our government is ready to embrace this. Is there a roadmap, for example? What sort of roadmap we are heading? Because as I said, 2030 is not far away. The reduction of carbon is, I'm not sure when. we still have so many cars. I do not know about electric cars, for example, when this is going to happen, you know. So, in fact, Suhakam took the initiative to propose to the government to amend the federal constitution on Article 5, right to live, to explain or to extend right to live, to right to live in a clean environment, so that it is guaranteed. Because under Article 5, it is only in relation to the political, as I said, political and civil right. So we want to expand that to the right to clean air, right to clean environment. So I think we have discussed with SPAN, and hopefully the government will take up this issue. Because you know that the situation in Malaysia is so bad, the environment especially, that there must be something that needs to be done. And we receive complaint, for example, that sometimes it is something that is not working when, a lot of, in the name of development, a lot of areas has been, cleared, and there are a lot of issues on forest degradation, so on and so forth. So I think that we have to, this is very serious. That's why there's, this SDG have to be really fully real. How do we fully realize this SDG? When we know that in 2030, the government is committed to that. And it is actually, it's human right. That's why I said, we have to use SDG to leverage human rights. So you must not see human right only in relation to political and civil right. The more important issues is poverty, gender equality, for example, and clean air and sanitation, or clean environment.
Sorry, Dato, but actually what are the challenges in order to create awareness on all these issues that you just mentioned before? Like, what are the stumbling blocks you think are?
No, I think everyone understands the situation, but I think it has to be coordinated. At the leadership level, make full commitment. We know that, leaders, the MPs have to play a role, a very important role. I always emphasize the fact that, whatever laws we pass, it must, the impact of that laws have to be informed to the public. Hundreds of laws that have been passed by Parliament. Do you know what laws have been passed by Parliament? And how much are they affected? You are affected by it. How much have they impacted on you and your life? So I think it is important that members of Parliament go back to their constituency and explain and have a lot of conversation and talk to the people, to their constituent, that why there is a need to have such laws, for example. Otherwise, we'll be left, so much of these laws have been passed, but how, do we know them? We don't know, we don't know. But the job of parliamentarian is to explain, to take this responsibility and to explain to, this is about leadership. Yeah? And the civil servant too have to understand why, for example, human right is so important, that human right must not be seen in a very small angle. Because when we talk about human right, in Malaysia, I know that there is the subject of LGBTQ, for example. So how do we solve this issue? And this is all over the world, But it is not just that. I've mentioned about sustainability. I've mentioned about climate change. I mentioned about transforming from fossil fuel to green economy. And this is very serious, that the whole world has already made commitment that we want to reduce the carbon dioxide. We want to reduce the use of carbon from how many percent to 1.5? But it's not happening. It's not happening. It is very serious. And the evidence are so obvious that it is happening in everywhere in the world. So if we are not, I'm not saying that we are not serious, if we are not committed, then we will face the consequences. So as I said again, human right is not just about the political and civil right. It is also about environment now. And it is very serious. So this is the second phase. This is the thing that we want to work on. And the private sector play a very important role because they are the one who, especially in plantation, oil and gas, they play an important role. How do you ensure that there's this green economy, when it is transformed finally, it will not cause problem to the majority of people, especially the workers. Yeah. So it's something that we have to think about, and it's not far from today. So I just want to tell you that when we talk about human right, it's not just, it is beyond the philosophical debate, because to certain quarters, the intellectuals, they talk about human right. In Malaysia, it's about, is it going to be universal? Is it going to be, it has to be universal. How universal it should be, But the core issue is those people living down there. The B40, for example, they are the one who suffers. You go to Chowkit, good enough to show you that they are not being taken care of. I mean, when we talk about poverty. So where will they be in a few years' time? What happened? What will be our, the situation in Malaysia as regard to environment? When we heard, we saw so many of this degradation. The water that we drink, is it safe? So these are real issues, and it affects us as human beings. That's why I said you have to look at human right in a wider perspective, not just about the freedom of expression, freedom of, movement, and so on and so forth. Yeah, you are ready to ask questions.
Anyone wants to ask a question? Yeah, but sorry, I have a question. So yeah, because Dato, I think one of the things we first, we think of human rights, maybe it's freedom to speak, but now when you mention about how it relates to sustainable development goals and the environment and the air we breathe and the water we drink, I think that's really opening up a different perspective on how we view human rights. So that is something I think we all can actually, something we learned this morning basically. So thank you.
Schools or higher educations?
Yeah, we are doing our part.
All right.
We have the promotion and education department division, which go to schools and universities. But we are also limited. We don't have the resources. Yeah. So that's why it has to be a concerted effort. So we work with NGOs.
Right.
I think NGOs are very good partners with Suhakam, and I think they do their part too. In if you talk about environment, there are so many of these NGOs that work and try to push the idea that this is very serious. I mean, we don't see the seriousness of how is it that environment is related to human right. For example, when we know that these are all related to everyday life of the society. So I think that's why I come to RSOG, that this is a place where you train future leaders, the civil servant corporate people. So at least now you are aware that in this room, for example, you are aware, as you said, that, it is not just about political and civil rights, but now it is about environment, and that touches on our right as human being, you know. So this is something that, so I appreciate of RSOG inviting me to give this talk. Actually, maybe you can, talk. We can now discuss this, freely and have this conversation.
I just want to add another point. For example, we're looking at no poverty as our goal. Okay? And perhaps one of the areas that we need to understand, what are the forces in economic policies that we can look into in ensuring the eradication of poverty? Because at the end of the day, in any society, there'll be the rich, the poor, the have-nots, right? But to what level the level of have-nots that we will now classify poverty, and what are the forces that perhaps cause that poverty, and if those forces can be looked into in the form of policies, economic policies, or wealth distribution policies, whatever. And if this could spark some new ideas on how we could look into the existing policies, and yes, these existing policies is contributing towards poverty, can it be revised and relooked? I mean, those are the areas that I think it will be worth looking into in achieving this, at least the goals of no poverty. Because I think we also know that Yang Mohamad PM also want to put menoktahkan kemiskinan at the end. Right?
That has been his fight since many years ago. But I think the Minister of Economic Minister is looking into this SDG part. So I think they are coming up with, proposal. But the problem here in Malaysia is the coordination. That there is this silo mentality that department or ministries are not able to work together. But I think RSOG will have to find a solution how best that the ministries, because it involves so many ministries here. All the ministries are accountable in ensuring that the poverty level is reduced, and not just Jabatan Kebajikan Masyarakat or the women ministry. All the ministries are involved. When we talk about children, for example, we have a children commissioner in our commission, not just Jabatan Kebajikan Masyarakat or the women, the ministry. That there are so many, because when you have refugees, children coming from that part of the Rohingya, for example, involve immigration, involve so many other ministries. So it has to be coordinated. It has to be coordinated. So if we do not coordinate, if we are not able to do that, then everyone will be doing the same thing. And the effort is, I think so much effort has been put in, but we will achieve less. But I know every time when Suhakam will be called by Bahayu, and we have all the various ministries, department, but still, why is it that we are not able to achieve that goal, target that we wanted so much? So I just, I'm sorry, we couldn't sometimes achieve that at the end of the day.
So I think, sorry.
In terms of working in silos, this working in silos mentality, the so-called territorial mentality, is real insofar as the government department is concerned. I wish to inform our esteemed audience here from RSOG, it is real, because Suhakam itself has faced this kind of problem where we want to reform a certain thing, there will be opposition from, a ministry, where they feel that we are encroaching into their area, into their authority, so they don't like that. So these are a few issues that needs to be ironed out from top, from the policy level, even the cabinet level, I think. So it is real. It's not imagined. It is real enough. And I've seen this kind of exchanges, myself. Thank you. I think these are the real thing we need to solve.
So I think based on what has been mentioned, I think one of the things is about leadership. So perhaps communication and stakeholder engagement, and this is how Raza School also can play a role in how to create this awareness, and also I think how to reduce all this red tape and bureaucracy that may be a hindrance to whatever policy or program which relates to our sustainable development goals, and also this human right aspect that needs to be put forward to in our government. I think, so that leadership aspect of this is, and also by speaking of leadership, how do you think this human right aspects also relates to the Madani concept that our current government has been championing?
I have slides on. I have slides on that actually. Can you go back to?
Go back.
Earlier part of. Yeah. No, if you look at the Madani 6 core values: sustainability, prosperity, innovation, respect, trust, and compassion. So I think this need to be articulated. What do you mean by kemampanan, for example? It is not only at the highest level or the leadership level, but how do you filter it down to the lowest level? I know of this story when you want to achieve your vision, mission, and objective. Japan is a very good example where there is this shared vision and mission with all the, they are shared with everyone. If you ask, for example, a cleaner in the factory, what is the vision of this company? The cleaner will answer as much as correct as the manager or their CEO. All together for that. But now, if I ask you, for example, the 6 core values of Madani in this room, what are they? What is sustainability? What is prosperity, innovation, respect, trust, and compassion? I bet you will get different answers. So I think this need to be clarified at the top level, shared with until at the bottom. This is very important. So if this is not being filtered down, then no one can take that Madani seriously, or they will have their own version of Madani. So I think this is important. The leadership play that very important role and clarify and articulate on what you mean by sustainability. For example, kemampanan. What is it? What does it take? Have to be explained, explored, and then finally, I think they have done that. But then this is the job of the leaders, to explain that. So if you talk about Madani, you just talk about Madani, you don't know what it is, that is going to be very difficult. Then how is this related to human rights, for example? So, number one, sustainability itself is about, carry on or embracing the Sustainable Development Goal. When you talk about Sustainable Development Goal, then it affects, for example, the 17 initiatives that I mentioned to you, there are 4 on that relates to human rights. Poverty is number 1, right to clean air and so on and so forth. Then prosperity, the green, the sustainability is about to ensure that everything will be in prosperity. And to achieve that, you have to be innovative. What are the innovation? of course you have to, there's this respect, trust, and compassion. So all, if you talk about human rights, it's also about respect, trust, and compassion. So it is very much related to human rights, actually. So as I said, but it needs to be articulated. It needs to be clarified. And this have to be, we have to do it consistently again and again and again. Like when we take oath on Rukun Negara in school every day. It's like that. It has to be, that sort of orientation have to be, as I start from the schools, there must be some good example of that, So it's not just, otherwise it's just, it will go. We have so many, Islam Hadari, Wasatiyah, now we have Madani. So what happened to Hadari? What happened to Wasatiyah? So this is something that everyone must be committed. But it has to start from the leaders. They must really understand. To me, the leaders, you have to look at the parliament, the 222 parliamentarians, they play a major role in going back to their constituency and tell their people that this is what we want. This is how we should move the country, without putting politics aside, actually. This is very important. There must not be any ulterior motive,
Work towards a common goal.
It must be. If you look at the core values, they are all excellent core values, They cut across the people in this country.
That's true. Otherwise, people just understand it. I agree with you, Prof. Understand on the surface level. Respect, we have to respect everyone. But if it relates to us, how you mentioned about the concept of human rights, then only they'll get a better understanding from the people, and also to get the message across.
Yep.
Anyone want to say any opinion?
Yeah.
Okay, I do. Assalamualaikum. My name is Azrul. I have to echo in what
Azrul dari mana?
Azrul, currently with ACAP.
Oh, okay.
Akademi Kepimpinan Pendidikan Tinggi.
Yeah, okay.
I have to echo with you, Prof, with regards to cascading down policy until the grassroots or akar umbi kind of things. In fact, the principle of the sixth principle of Madani is also quite related to the SDG itself, and it is important also for each and every, as you said, parliamentarian, but I would tackle from another aspect, which is the ministers, to echo and translate the principle of Madani, how it relates to human rights, and how it is in line with SDG. For instance, we heard recently that the Minister of Higher Education have made a policy statement saying that education access for the refugee. There's a policy statement made by the minister, but how it will be translated is yet to be seen. Okay, this is in fact in line with SDG number 4, equitable and accessible education for all, right? So, I mean, I have to agree with you on that. I mean, but we have yet to hear from MOE on how they will steer this human rights issue with relations to education, especially to the younger children. But higher education is one thing, but we all know prior to enrollment to higher education, basic education is very critical at a very younger level. So that's just my 2 cents value of view, Prof. Thank you.
Thank you, Azrul. Actually, on education, it's true that the government had made some policy statement. But if you go to school, you have for example, a refugee, orang Rohingya lah. Kalau tak ada IC, tak ada identity card, you will not be allowed. Yeah, they're not allowed. Although there's already a provision that they can come. Even hospital, access to help. If you don't have IC, you don't go to the hospital. Although we were told that some hospitals have taken that initiative, but not all hospitals are like. So they have different practice. Some just ignore, and maybe a few will take up that policy. So it is. That's right, at the lowest level. So this is the issue. I think everything is like that, not just refugees, not just, I think other policies, And now we hope that the issue on citizenship is resolved. Ini, for example, I really pity the baby that is put in a basket, and then they are left in the orphanage. No IC. They are Malaysian. It's very unfortunate that this happened. But why should we punish the baby? They are innocent. So this is why we are fighting for that citizenship. This is very tough. It's a tough call, really, for Suhakam. It's a very big challenge. But that is one big issue. Beratus ribu di Malaysia tidak ada kad pengenalan. And that involve our people. So although there is this decision-making process being made by the highest authority or the ministers or prime ministers, but we want to see this is not happening on the ground. And very unfortunate,
Yeah, I guess it also requires a mindset change also, which is the hardest part to do, by the way. So how isn't that one? But I'm sure, I think, on a personal note, like, Dato, what actually drives you and motivates you when you're sitting as a chairperson of Suhakam? What do you would like to see, actually, changes?
It's very challenging. I'm given that mandate, and that I'm entrusted. The young Dipertuan Agong actually will give the consent, upon recommendation made by the Prime Minister appointment. So truly, it is really an honor for us as commissioners, and we have to do our job, and loyalty to the king and the country. So that is motivation number one, because we are privileged and honored to be given that position. But we have a lot of challenges. We are an independent body. And as I said, we are entrusted with that 4 role or objective that we have to do. Orang kata macam mana pahit pun, susah macam mana pun, you have to advise the government. Where they have gone wrong, we have to advise them. That the way is this way, because you cannot ignore human rights, because that is basic. Human right is about dignity. Dignity. Yeah. Even to the extent that, that if we have to protect the interests of the transgender group, if their rights have been infringed, we will be at the forefront. But of course, the recognition is different thing. But human right is real, as I said. You cannot politicize human right. No, it is real. So the challenge is that the driving force that we have to work. We have to work and ensure that we don't. The thing is, in Suhakam, our work is that we don't expect to be given credits or make to no, that is not what we wanted actually. But we want to ensure that as long as we are the commissioners, we will do our best to ensure that human right is protected and guaranteed. And this is across the board. This is across the board, regardless of race, religion. Yeah. No discriminatory. That is our job, actually. It's, as I said, very challenging.
But it's very commendable as well to do something good for our people and community as well.
Thank you.
But how do you, sometimes I'm sure it's frustrating when you want to get your ideas across or your opinions across and trying to make the change. But then how do you keep motivating yourselves to say that, okay, we can make a big breakthrough from this, or we can achieve what we want to? Like, what drives you in that sense?
I think one thing that I believe, after 1 year being commissioners, we are seen as a mediator, Mediator, because there are things that government cannot do it for reasons that we. But I think as an independent body, we can do the mediation. And I believe in engagement. I don't believe in confrontational. We don't confront issues. We will work with authorities, enforcement agencies, for example, and we will tell them that this is the situation. How do we resolve this? We have to understand their perspective. It's not, sometimes we don't see. I can give you an example where there are a lot of issues on custodial death. Yeah? Mati dalam tahanan polis, for example. And that has been for years. Police has been attacked and condemned. But when we talk to the police, if you look at the lockup, for example, the lockup is so small that you put in 100 detainees. How can they survive? The lockup is only meant for those accused in a criminal. But pendatang haram pun masuk situ. Drug addict masuk dalam tu. Sampai tidur berdiri. So, if you do not talk to them, we do not know their problems. So we will have to tell the government, perhaps the facilities have to be better, the infrastructure. Maybe money need to be given to ensure that these lockups are, is at least, sustainable. Also prison, prison condition is worse. You have to see for yourself. We still have bucket system until today. How do you expect, for example, prisoners to pray when you have the bucket in their cell? So you need to tell the government that something needs to be done.
Which involves money as well.
Of course. But you cannot totally blame on the police. And this custodial death sometimes it's not about police brutality. When the detainees came, they are already sick. Dah sakit. And there are also a lot of mental depression in prison. And many people are not aware of that. So you need to talk. You need to talk to understand their problems and the challenges. Then only we can work out and get the solution. So to me, confrontational is not the idea, but engagement. And mediation, is very important. There is such thing as mediation, human rights. I think we play that role. Commissioners, officers play that role. It's very important to understand the situation understand the problem and find a solution. I think this is also part of leadership. You know, part of leadership is not only to complain, but also to find a solution. And how do we solve the issue? But, you know, Alhamdulillah, I think our relationship have been very good with the enforcement agencies, and they understand, you know. And I think it's also good that we give that input. That's why the SWACAM report, the yearly report, this is under the act that we have to submit to Parliament, and to debate in Parliament is also very important. The last report was 2020. 37 members of Parliament debated the issues and tell the government agencies that these are reports from SWACAM. Government need to do something. Don't you think that is something good?
Yes,
Yes.
definitely.
Yeah. You know, at least the agencies are aware that, you know, these are the situation. Yeah. Okay. I know my colleague perhaps want to say something.
Yeah.
Maybe they can.
Sorry, anyone else? Any questions? But sorry, Prof. Dato, what do you think are some of the things that our leaders should have, like, to address all these issues that you just mentioned? What are the things you think is the gap or the needs that needs to be addressed? Some of the competencies or the skills. I think maybe one of it is, I suppose, negotiation or
Yeah.
mediating.
I think negotiation and mediation very important. Communication
Communication.
is very important for leaders. Actually, to understand the situation is where you really need to, you know, sometimes it's only one version. You need to have both sides of the stories, you know. So that will give, then you can make a judgment call or make decision on that, you know. So that is very important.
Good decision making as well.
Yes,
yeah,
yes. The
from
informed. Yes.
And how do you see Suhakam in the next 1 year, 2 years? What the role is going to be? A bit more prominent, more challenging?
The challenges are there, and we have to be steadfast on, you know, we have to take position. There is already this independence that we should enjoy. You know, I think that's very important. And the work is 24/7. You know, you cannot rest or seasonal. It's not like that. And every day there will be new things, new case. So you have to be ready with that. And you need a lot of energy to make sure that you know, Suhakam role is seen to be. You know, you have to be visible in that sense, and to cope with, we have what, 90 staff, 100 staff. I think that's good for us, actually, good numbers. But the support from the government is also important in that sense, you know, because as I said, human right is about humanitarian and dignity, you know. I mean, poverty, for example, is something that is everyone's responsibility. You know, ensuring clean air, clean water to drink. These are all for everyone. You know. So, I think it's important that the message is cut across, understand by everyone, and the support is there for us to do our job. So I always say this to colleagues from other enforcement agencies, that please understand the situation. We have a job to do, and we are the watchdog of, Otherwise, what's the significance of our role? Is to tell the government agencies, where where they have infringed or, because this is based on complaints, and these are real complaints. It's not political complaints. They're complaints coming from the people, actually.
Which is not easy to do, because then they'll be thinking, why are you telling
Yeah,
them what to
of
do?
course. Yeah, but
That's
that's our job. We have to tell them.
yes.
So you have, as I said, you have to be steadfast and forge ahead.
But what can people like us, how can we play a role in?
I think the idea of now that you're aware that human right is not just, as I say, political and civil, now it goes into SDG and sustainability, and I think that is something that you have learned. And I think the idea of sharing and also able to perhaps communicate with others, tell others the importance of human rights in this country. I think that really helps. No, we actually suggested to establish Human Rights Academy, actually. Yes, because we thought that this idea should come from the education, like universities, where you nurture leadership, So universities produce the future leaders of the country, and I think with this academy, it helps to at least appreciate and practice human rights in this country. That is part of our plan, actually. And we need to work also with our partners from the CSO and NGO. They play a very important role. And you know that in climate change, for example, the role of NGOs and CSO in trying to finally come up with the Paris Agreement, that was a success story. Now the CSOs, not only that, now they are very equipped. The scientists are also, the scientists help a lot in coming up with, in the successful making of the Paris Agreement. I think in our case, the CSOs and NGOs on environment are helping us a lot. In even the government cannot put a deaf ears to NGOs now, because they give a great input, a very valuable input to the government, to move on and to make sure that that the Paris Agreement is, of course, I'm not talking, the political angle of Paris Agreement is another thing that you have to understand, that, is what happened to those superpowers that promised to provide the funding that is not yet been seen, And the idea now by China, for example, is to be so, in solidarity. China came up with this proposal of in solidarity, meaning that let's do it together, rather than talking about the political agenda of climate change. Now everyone will have to. I think China also play a major role, in ensuring that the Paris Agreement finally is achieved, and the fact that it is bottom up, because it is up to the country that going to make commitment, how much or how many percent you want to reduce on the carbon usage. That is another new idea of Paris Agreement. But I mentioned Paris Agreement because it has got to do with human rights too. So it's all interrelated. It's all interrelated, and I'm worried about the multinational companies. I'm worried about big companies operate oil and gas plantation. Whether they really fully embrace the idea of sustainability and sustainable development goal. I'm not sure, because many are actually not familiar with human rights aspect. When we talk to Petronas, for example, when we talk to Felda, these are big companies. They are still at the level of why is it that human right is in this, you know? How is it that, that's why you see human right is seen, you know, you always become, you know, the idea of human right is always taken in negatively, because you always relate to the political and civil right. You don't see human right in the climate change or environment. So they question sometimes, you know, why is it that human rights is so, you know, important here. So when we talk about the SDG, then they see the need to ensure that, you know, this human right aspect is to be taken into account seriously. We are also thinking of doing a human right index for Malaysia. We do not want others to dictate us how human rights should be practiced in Malaysia. So we are trying to work out on human right index.
So what does it actually
No,
measure?
it's still an idea.
I see.
It's an idea, but we hope we could work with experts in coming up with the index. And of course, it has to encompass not just, as I said, political, civil, economic, social, and cultural, as the new environmental or SDG. So this is work in progress in Sohakam, actually. Hopefully that will be used as a barometer to you know, especially, you know, we only know about how workers have been exploited. You know, sharing one bed, three people sharing one bed, when during COVID, when what is the company name? You know, Top Club. You know, so you know, so that also come under our, you know, attention, because it's also human right. You know. So that's why we need that human right index to put in a better in a perspective, so that you can use, you know where you are. You can gauge, you know, if you are a company, you can gauge.
Is it something that has been practiced in other countries? Or?
Yeah. It's a human right index. There are several organizations in this world, and you know, if you look, it's funny that Malaysia is behind Singapore in terms of human rights. I'm not sure how that can be, you know. So maybe they look into right to development. You see, there is another angle of human right where it only talks about right to development. China, for example, is one of the proponents of that right to development, rather than looking at human right in a, you know. So that is another perspective that China had been practicing, right to development. So I think Singapore is also into that, actually. Yeah.
Thank you, Dato. Anyone else has any final thoughts? Yeah.
Just as a complementary, I wish to share my own personal views on the challenges that Sohakam are facing, which Prof. Rahmat has explained quite extensively. But we are looking into two opposing forces, you know, in terms of our role. One view is that we are supporting the global liberal fundamentals proposed by the UN, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and so on. The other one is that we are pro-government. You know, that's another view. Both are wrong, actually. What we are trying to do, I think, as if I remember, I think your professor mentioned, Professor Kamal mentioned during my first meeting here about acuan tempatan, you know. That is part of our challenges, actually, because acuan tempatan is in line with our own act, actually. Our act says we can practice the UHDR, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, up to the extent that it is not inconsistent with our constitution. So that's our caveat. The limit is there. So this itself presents a real challenge, to control, to moderate. As Professor Rahmat has said, we mediate even on ideas. Even on ideas also we have to mediate. So it's difficult to make everyone happy, but perhaps if we can make someone or a section of them happy, I think we have achieved our role, I think, to some extent. So that's the position, acuan tempatan, because of various factors like LGBTQ, Muslim children, especially girls, in terms of grooming, early child marriage and so on. So there are some local traditions which is very difficult to change, and justifiably so sometimes because of the religious fundamentals in Islam, for example. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So anyone else has anything to add or share based on our presentation by Prof. Dato Rahmat?
We have the full slide.
Yeah, we can share with the... Oh. Very heavy, the topic.
It's so heavy.
Information overload. But what, Prof. Dato, as a final thing, like, what do you see yourself doing before you end your term as a chairperson of Sohakam? What you would like to see? What kind of changes that, on your personal note,
Well, I think okay. It's too short. I mean, yeah, it's what is important is that the idea of, as I said, human rights have to be cascaded to the lowest level. Everyone should understand. That's why we have to go to schools. School is where you'll meet the children. That's why the children are, they are very honest people, and have to teach them the values of humanity. That's very important. The value of humanity. Adab, another thing. Be respectful of others. This is again across the board. Maknanya tak kira lah sekolah apa tu, anak murid, anak Cina, India, Melayu. They have to learn to live together in this country in harmony. They should not be disturbed by, bad influence. When we were in school, we don't have that issue. My canteen operator, nama dia Pak Wong, Cina. And what is our favorite food? Bubur ayam. Every morning kita makan bubur ayam. Tapi dulu tak kisah pun. Kenapa kita tak tanya halal haram? I'm sure Pak Wong tu with his wisdom, majority sekolah tu sekolah Melayu, takkanlah dia tak ambil ayam tak halal. Tapi kita tak fikir gitu. Semua anak-anak Melayu, Cina, India semua sama makan. Itu sekolah dulu. Kenapa tak ada sikap menghormati? And we are segregating ourselves. This is very dangerous. Macam mana kita nak cakap pasal human right when we don't respect each other? when we don't respect each other religion. So that is very important. I don't know how the gap, how do we narrow this gap? The trust deficit, the confidence, I think the school curriculum, there's somehow or other, we need to start with the school first. Humanity, being respectful. Inilah Madani, Madani lah kalau kita nak, if we want to practice Madani. Compassion, trust, respect. These three. How are we going to, we are already senior citizens, warga emas. So we want to see, can that be reverted? Can that kind of perpaduan, that harmonious relationship, we want to see in school. And teachers are racial blind. Tak kira lah cikgu tu Chinese or Indian or Malays, with full dedication. Dia tak ada cakap, tak faham, pergi tuition saya. Pergi tuition saya. Tak ada cakap macam tu. But I don't blame the teachers because they are given a lot of responsibility. They cannot cope. Until today, we have 40 students in a class. That was during our time, in the 60s, Prof Kamal punya time. Kenapa tak boleh kurang? Kenapa tak ada teacher assistant? Kenapa? So I think it all started dekat sekolah. Sekolah tu has to be in school. On that we have to invest on that. That is
Start them young, basically.
Yes, we have to start them young. If you ask me again, the national curriculum should only be one. Tak payah the vernacular school ni. Sorry, I'm being honest about this. Tak apa, masukkan Chinese culture, masukkan Indian culture, masukkan religion. Budak Melayu kena belajar bahasa Cina. Tak apa. I think that is one thing that we miss. Until today, kita tak faham. Kawan Cina kita cakap, bila cakap Cina. Kawan kita cakap India, kita tak faham. Kalau dulu ada that curriculum, kan kita faham. Masukkan. But if you have that national curriculum, tak ada lagi vernacular school. But ada political will kah? Itulah. Itu yang saya cakap tu. Do we have the political will nak buat tu? Dah bertahun, 65 tahun kan? So itulah. Itu dia punya challenge. That's the big challenge. Then we can, if we have that, then long time. Tapi it's still not too late. The remaking of one generation is 25 years. 25 years. We do not want to be like some countries in Africa and also in Sri Lanka. I have been to this country. My 8 years working in Sri Lanka, in India, as Secretary General of ALCO. Going to war-torn countries yang nak reconstruct balik, so difficult. I visited Sri Lanka, for example. It's such a pity, because Colombo was much better than Singapore at one time. They are much advanced. But what happened? Because of the civil war. And now they are suffering. Some African countries also have that problem. To reconstruct will take 25 years at least. So, for us, kita nak buat balik semula. So that's why, na'uzubillah lah, we do not want to have that problem. The 13 May should not happen again. Kita tak nak. But we can be better. We can make this country better. Kenapa kita pergi Singapore, kita geram kat Singapore? We are always envious of Singapore. Why? When we have resources, we have so much. we can do better. But again, leadership, also very important. Wisdom, you know, because we have to think ahead, 25, 50 years ahead. Coming back to my topic, human right is about dignity and humanity. Respect. Itulah balik semula pada Madani inilah. Respect, trust, compassion. So, I think it's everyone's responsibility. We want to see Malaysia in harmony. There is no such thing as, you bukan orang Malaysia lah. You are not, you know. No, tak boleh. They are here with us. They are Malaysian. Tak boleh cakap, oh Chinese tak boleh, Indian tak boleh. No. We are all Malaysian. So we have to work it out. Yeah. So ni bersempena dengan Hari Merdeka dan Hari Malaysia.
Thank you very much, Dato. That's really timely for Hari Merdeka next week. Yeah. But we really learned a lot from today's session. I think I personally, because as I told you, human rights for me is like freedom of speech and all, but you know, to relate it to sustainable development goals is something I learned more, and I'm sure our audience did as well. And thank you for a really enlightening session, and we've learned a lot, and we look forward to working with you and Suhakam for future as well, especially in terms of our leadership and how we can actually create more awareness and relate this to the leadership in the public sector. Thank you very much, Dato, and I'd like to pass the floor to our MC.
Okay, thank you Yang Berbahagia Dato for a very fruitful session, and thank you Ms. Satya for moderating in conversation series today. Before we end, we seek everyone cooperation to scan the QR code on the screen to complete the evaluation form. Everyone is invited for a group photo session at our lobby. We would also like to inform everyone that packed lunch is provided at the executive lounge area. Thank you and have a pleasant day. Wassalam.